They're not going to foul. The Heat will let it play out. It's over. At last, the long wait is over. After 47 years, the Denver Nuggets can finally call themselves NBA champions.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Basketball in the Mountains. I am your host, Tyler King, as always, the college sports reporter for the Denver Gazette. This is episode 37, and we are talking strictly about the Denver Nuggets today. If you missed the episode the other day with my good friend Caleb Wolfinger, we did more of a gambling, betting preview look at the Nuggets, Suns, and Jazz, talking through their over-unders, talking through the teams a little bit, and giving some awards, talking some awards with some of the long shots and all that kind of stuff. So if you missed that, make sure to check that out. We're also in the midst of our college hoops season preview series. We're 3 episodes into that. If you missed that, I had the coaches on from Wyoming, Utah Valley, and Montana on to preview their respective seasons. Then we got plenty more to come, like I said, ahead of the November 3rd Monday night season opener for the majority of college basketball. So should be a really fun couple weeks on the feed. And then, as we get in the season as well, I'm looking forward to really watching some hoops. I mean, preseason NBA is obviously back on. We're going to talk a little bit about what the Nuggets have done so far today. But looking forward to getting back to covering Nuggets games and college games and all that kind of stuff. It's been a while, but looking forward to having basketball back for our first full season here on the podcast, which obviously I'm excited about. So, like I said, doing a really comprehensive Nuggets season preview episode today. And to do so, we've got Vinny Benedetto, my colleague over at the Denver Gazette. Vinny, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Looking forward to the season getting started here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's obviously the Nuggets had preseason games in different spots. They had the training camp in San Diego, played a game up in Vancouver, and then last night, we're recording this on Wednesday afternoon. Last night they played the Bulls over at Ball Arena. Just so far through a couple preseason games for the Nuggets, what have you liked? What have you seen from this group as they get ready for what's expected to be a season with high expectations here in the Mile High City?
Yeah, I think it starts with the starting five here. Just in terms, last night there was a run, an 18-0 run, I think, in the middle of the first quarter that was, largely anchored by the starting five. And I think, Tim Hardaway Jr. probably got in there for a portion of that. But I think the most encouraging thing about the way the starting five has looked is that, Cam Johnson is still very much kind of getting settled into figuring out where his shots are going to come from. He hasn't shot it as well as he would like, or he probably will once, he's a little bit more comfortable. But, those other 4 guys in the starting lineup, Jamal Murray, Christian Brown, Aaron Gordon, Nikola Jokic, I think they're really encouraging signs from all those guys. And I'm sure we'll get to them individually in a little bit. But I just think I don't think there was much concern about how the starting five would look after swapping Michael Porter Jr. for Cam Johnson. But I think, early indications have probably exceeded what I would have expected at this point of year. I think every team is struggling with turnovers a little bit right now just because, it's preseason. Everybody's getting used to some stuff. Teams have been picking up full court a little bit more.
Yeah.
Toronto was pretty ruthless with it. So, yeah, I think for the most part, the starting five has probably exceeded expectations for this point in the preseason.
Yeah, I want to talk about just about everybody in the starting five individually, and we'll go through some of the depth on the bench as well. But this is something Caleb and I talked about on the previous episode. But I want to get your take on this too. But it feels like the biggest storyline heading into this Nugget season is it feels like this is probably, if not the most talented, then definitely the deepest team the Nuggets have had in the Nikola Jokic era. Do you agree with that? And just kind of what is your take on overall the expectations and how this roster has quickly kind of changed in some meaningful ways and some less meaningful ways? Just coming off of last year, another second round exit in game 7, and now it feels like quickly the Nuggets are back to being a clear cut title contender going into the season.
Yeah, I think it has to be the deepest team, and just in terms of I think teams are starting to be able to catch up to Oklahoma City and the multitude of ways Oklahoma City can play. I think that's one thing David Adelman has kind of prioritized this preseason, is just getting looks at a few of these different things. Like there's a lot of talk about Nikola Jokic and Jonas Valanciunas playing together. We've seen that in very small bits. That's something that still needs to be explored a little bit more. But then just looking at last night's game, they had Aaron, Nikola, and Jonas out there together in like
Yeah.
a supersized lineup. And then on the flip side of that, there was a stretch where I'm not going to get all of this right, but it was like Spencer Jones was playing the five
Hmm.
with like a bunch of wings out there. So it's like they can kind of like,
Hayden and Julian were out there for that stretch too. Yeah.
yeah, it was just like incredibly small. So I think they're just trying to, it's not all going to work, but they have the ability
Yeah.
to try these different things, which I think is a significant improvement from last season. And you've kind of got um, multiple options off the bench, which I don't think you've had in previous seasons in terms of if there's a stretch where Tim Hardaway Jr. isn't shooting it well. I think Julian Strother is going to
Yeah.
get more minutes in that stretch. And if there's a stretch where Julian can't defend without fouling or he's struggling, with efficiency, Tim can pick up more minutes. You've got Bruce Brown and Jalen Pickett who can both, handle backup point guard minutes. So I just think there's certainly more potential answers to the questions opposing teams are going to ask. And I don't even think the championship team really had that ability. I think they just had like a super solid 8 or 9
Yeah.
guys that they knew what they were getting on a nightly basis.
Yeah, that championship team was the starting five was incredible. Then Christian Brown had some really good moments during the playoffs. Jeff Green obviously had good moments during the playoffs, and Bruce Brown as well. It felt like all three of those guys had their moments surrounding a really good starting five. But like you said, the versatility with the lineups is going to be really fun to watch. I think at points this season, you mentioned earlier, like Cam Johnson, if he is in a shooting slump, or there's been times during his career where he hasn't been the most durable guy. Like you could easily slide Christian Brown to 3, put Bruce Brown in the starting lineup, or if you wanted to do kind of more of a like for like, put Tim Hardaway Jr. in there. There's a lot of different options with this group, and I think the fact that they're pretty healthy at this point too is kind of a refreshing change for this team. We'll talk specifically about Jamal Murray in a little bit, but obviously I want to just get your thoughts on where Nikola Jokic is going into this season because this is something else we talked about on the betting specific podcast the other day. But in my opinion, I feel like Nikola Jokic should be the favorite to win the MVP this year. It's really hard as Joker has learned the last couple of years. It's really hard to go back to back. And I think with SGA, you kind of have to take a step up. And they already won 68 games as a team last year. So there's not much room for them to grow as a team in terms of improvement. So we'll have to see what SGA can do in terms of his individual numbers. But obviously, Joker didn't have the Eurobasket he was maybe hoping for, exiting a little bit sooner, but it feels like he's, as healthy as ever and looking as good as ever. Like, do you feel like this could be just as close to what he was doing last year, which obviously was an all-time offensive season for him?
Yeah. And the funny thing is, like, you see people watching Eurobasket from afar, and people are commenting on the appearance of his physical condition.
Yeah.
And he's just one of those guys. I've seen it too many times. Like, I'm not going to put stock on what he looks like when he shows up to camp.
He's just always going to be good for, 75 games in a season, and he's going to play his regular minutes, and maybe he'll have a nick or a bruise there, but he's just like an Iron Man at this point. Like his body can kind of withstand it maybe looks deceiving, but his body can kind of withstand the bruises of an NBA season. And he's always at some point in the season, he's always going to get into that terrific shape. Like I don't ever doubt that with him.
Yeah, I've seen him outrun centers in the final 5 minutes of a playoff game too many times to sweat that too much. And yeah, I think he's probably the betting favorite to win MVP this year. It feels like he might have to average a triple double again. It feels like that,
or get really close. Yeah.
or yeah. And I guess the only concern I would have if I was, holding on to a Jokic MVP ticket is this team has been, pretty intentional. One thing they've talked a lot about is winning more games decisively. And I think this team with the improved bench unit in depth, I don't think there's going to be as it'll happen from time to time. I don't think it's going to be as frequent where Jokic checks out with the Nuggets up 16 at the end of the third quarter, and he comes back to a 4-point lead, and he has to go into God mode for the final 8 minutes. But yeah, SGA obviously got it last year, deserved it. I don't think there was a wrong choice there. And yeah, so I think it's probably going to be one of those two guys, and I'd say it's probably pretty close to a coin flip right now. But I think, yeah, there's no indication that Joker hasn't put himself in position to be one of those top two guys for sure.
Yeah, the only other two guys I would even watch out for are like Giannis and Luka if they're just able to kind of go nuclear in terms of the individual stuff they're able to do and carry lesser squads to better records than maybe expected. Like if the Bucks end up somehow getting like a top 4 seed, even in a bad East, like with that roster, I think that'd be pretty incredible feat for Giannis. And same thing for Luka, like in a loaded West, if they're able to get a first round, like a top 4 seed as well, I think that would be and they're obviously putting up crazy numbers. I think those guys would be warranted too. But otherwise, I agree with you. It's probably going to be coin flip between Jokic and SGA probably for the next 2 or 3 years before Victor Wembanyama emerges. Although that could be sooner rather than later with what he's looking like in this preseason. Obviously, the next guy I want to talk about in the starting lineup, we mentioned him already a bunch, but Cam Johnson, just kind of his fit with this group so far. I know he's already learning some of the crazy passes Nikola Jokic is going to throw from one end of the court to the other and all that kind of stuff. But he was always going to be kind of a like for like fit with Michael Porter Jr. offensively. Maybe he's more of a standstill kind of shooter than Mike was, who can really do some stuff off movement and especially off dribble handoffs and all that kind of stuff. But you had a great story this week in the Denver Gazette on Cam Johnson, just how smart of a not just basketball player but person he is. And it feels like as time goes on in these first couple weeks, he's really going to start to figure it out how he can best impact this team. And by Christmas, feels like you're going to get the best. He'll be the best version of himself. Do you think?
Yeah, and I think there's still. So kind of like with the rotation talk, there's even within like the starting five, I feel like there's so much more to be explored.
Yeah.
Just because there's so much new. Like David Adelman is trying to figure out, what works, what doesn't. He talks a lot about these ideas that he has, and like some of them are like crazy or wild, and he's just like, I think he spent some preseason trying to figure that out. But I think for the most part, the starting five has been more so about developing chemistry with like the bread and butter of their offensive philosophy, and then off of that, as they get into the season, there will be more like it was. I think it was after their first two preseason, maybe after their third preseason game. David Adelman said something like, they haven't even gotten to the point where they've like put in, out of timeout plays specifically for Cam and that kind of stuff. So like I think that stuff is going to come along. And to your point, it might take until Christmas, but I think around that time, it's going to all click for Cam as a part of this starting unit. And Nikola Jokic has been encouraging him to kind of not be content just like fitting into his box within the offense. That he'd like to get Cam to the point where he's exploring a bit more, because Cam's one of those guys. Like you look at Phoenix, and it was more of the stand in the corner space, let Devin Booker, Chris Paul, whoever it was, kind of operate the offense. Then in Brooklyn, he was on the ball so much more.
Especially last year. Yeah.
And so I think his current role is like, the on a contending team, like the easiest thing for him to do is space the floor. Like that's the easiest way to, help early. But as they get more comfortable, I think we're going to see more, Cam initiating pick and rolls with Joker, or probably could do some inverted stuff there.
For sure. That's going to be fun. That's going to be fun for them to explore.
DA's a pretty creative coach, so I think with time there's going to be some fun wrinkles to this offense that revolve more around Cam than what we've seen in preseason.
I mentioned Jamal earlier. It seems like he's as healthy as ever, kind of going into a season that's kind of been the last couple of years, really since he came back, to be honest. Like the first couple of months of the season have been at times a challenge for him. Just kind of how has he been viewing, the early part of the preseason and then now getting into the season? Like, what are you expecting from Jamal in terms of taking it easy, or did he do enough during the offseason to kind of put himself in a good position here to start the year?
Yeah, I think, I think you've been around Jamal enough now to realize there are a few things Jamal really doesn't like, and it's like certain narratives. He has admitted, that the reputation for being a slow starter has been, a bit deserved, and he really doesn't like talking about, his own conditioning. He's got that.
Yeah, not a big fan of that. Yeah.
He's got that kind of like fighter mentality where like even if I'm tired, I can fight through it and play through it. And so obviously when he's played this well, people are trying to get to the bottom of it, to varying levels of success about, what his offseason looked like. Was it any different? And Jamal has, predictably maintained that it's just, he had a longer offseason. You look back at the last few years and it was, uh, last year was the Olympics. The year before that, they win the championship, and then you go back to the bubble led to a shorter offseason. The season after the bubble started later, ran longer. So
Had the injury is in there as well. Yeah, that was like a 16-month thing, 18-month thing. Yeah.
yeah, and so there's just been a lot of talk about the benefits of having more time, and he talks about this almost as much mentally as he does physically. Um, but yeah, it feels like Jamal's in a better spot than we've seen him be in for a long time. And I think another encouraging part of just what we've seen from Jamal, it feels like the 3-point rate is up. For a guy who is so good at the mid range, I think he's probably, I don't want to say like used it too much or gotten like too comfortable with it, because he is so gifted in that spot. But it feels like 3-point attempts are up, and he's attacking the rim more aggressively than we've seen, especially at early in the season. So yeah, I think everyone's, until he makes that first All-Star game, everyone's gonna be like, is this the season? Is this the season? And I've been skeptical of that in the past, but it feels like the way things look so far this year, this might be his best shot.
Yeah, he's obviously very settled into his current contract at this point, so there's nothing kind of lingering in terms of, if he I'm sure obviously he wants to make an All-Star game, make an All-NBA team, because he feels like he views himself on that level, and he's proven he can play at that level, in some of the biggest moments of his career, just not for long enough to get those kind of season-long awards kind of thing. So maybe this could be the year with, like you said, a longer offseason, less pressure. He finally does that. Next guy I want to talk about in the starting lineup is Christian Braun. Just because, obviously he is a guy that does have an extension looming, and that's going to be an interesting subplot over the next, not just couple of weeks, but the season as a whole. Is kind of how can he take the next step? Obviously, he really seamlessly transitioned into a starting role last year, and was so important for them. I feel like during the regular season, it's just some of the stuff he was able to do when certain guys were in and out of the lineup. This kind of, what are you looking for CB in year 2 as a starter, and just kind of how will that, how he plays affect kind of the potential extension? Because obviously some of the rumors and stuff, it seems like it's going to be north of 20 million, at least to start for him, which feels like is deserved for the quality of starter that he is. But it feels like it could get even higher depending on how he plays this season, because it feels like he could just go up another level. It seems like.
Yeah, yeah. If I'm the Nuggets, I think I'm trying to get that extension done. I don't know if I want to let that go to restricted free agency.
Yeah.
Just because I think there are two things he can do that will really elevate his game, and the first one is something we've talked about, I think, for the last year or so, and that's just kind of having a quicker trigger on the 3-point shot. Like, he's gonna get plenty of good looks, but in the past it feels like there have been, all of these guys, even the best shooters, have like ebbs and flows throughout the season. There are periods where they can't miss, and there are periods where you're going to make, 2 of 15 over the course of 3 or 4 games or whatever it is. So I think, I don't think this is the most important thing, but I think this is just something that we've kind of seen progress over the last couple of years, is him just being comfortable and just committing to taking the shot when it's presented to him. And then the second one, I think we've seen a bit more this offseason or this preseason, is just kind of like the on-ball creation stuff. I'm thinking back to a sequence or a play against the Clippers. I think he uses a screen, gets Kawhi off him on the screen, and then drives for like the up and under reverse layup in the half court set. Like, I think that would, I don't think there are going to be a ton of opportunities for him to do that, but just the ability to relieve Jamal Murray of some ball handling responsibilities in that starting unit, I think will go a long way. And then I think, the CB's baseline is always going to be the defensive work and the transition scoring. That's kind of like what the foundation of his game, I think, is always going to be built on. But the level up, I think, comes down to being willing to live with the ups and downs of the 3-point shot, and then just kind of being willing to, or embracing more of a on-ball creator role, I guess, in the half court when needed.
And the last guy, obviously, I have to mention before getting to the bench, we haven't really mentioned him at all on the podcast so far yet, is Aaron Gordon. Just watching him last night, I think there was like a step back, off balance three he hit over Josh Giddey on like the far side of the court from where we usually sit on the media, in the media section. And I was like, is he just going to have another incredible shooting season? Like, has he just found another gear of his career? Because I at this point, I'm just expecting AG to be the same guy he was last year. And last year, he was so incredible for this team.
Yeah, and like I mean, I feel like there has to be some regression
Yeah,
on the
it has,
3-point
yeah.
shot. Like I don't think he's shooting 44 or whatever it was last year, but I do think he's shown that wasn't an anomaly. And like I was gonna bring up the side step three you're mentioning, I think it just comes down to his awareness of what his role kind of requires of him. And another like a fun concession he made on media day was like he is still super athletic, but
Yeah.
he is not the like 22-year-old like absolute freak he once was.
The dunk contest version is not there anymore, but he's still
Yeah,
a ridiculous athlete in other ways.
yeah, he's like, well, I'm not jumping over mascots anymore. But functionally, for what the Nuggets need from him, he is still an elite athlete by NBA standards. But I think he has done a really nice job of embracing what is going to elongate his career. Putting more emphasis on the 3-point shot. Willingness to kind of do the dirty work for a team that at times has probably played a little bit too finesse. So yeah, I think the shooting is real.
Yeah, I was
I
just
don't.
floored by how unsurprised I was that he made that shot last night. I was like, oh, he just did that a lot last year. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even really blink when he did that. But I'm like, wait, that's still Aaron Gordon. Like, this is the guy that had some really rough shooting stretches in the early part of his Nuggets career. And even during the championship run, he was not like a knockdown shooter for much of that run. He was doing everything else for the team, though. But it was just kind of like, man, he's really come so far. And it's like another evolution of Aaron Gordon's career, as a very impressive career as a basketball player. Obviously, I want to talk about the bench as well. We don't have to spend as much time on each of the guys, but which of these kind of is most intriguing to you? Like Bruce Brown, can he pick up right where he left off with this Nuggets team? Because obviously, I don't think Nuggets fans watched a ton of him the last couple of years with Toronto and Indiana and New Orleans, kind of all the spots. He made his money, and now he's back, and it feels like he could pick up where he left off. Like, what do you think on that? And then kind of the other things is like Valanciunas' role, and then Peyton Watson, Julian Strawther, those kind of guys growing, just kind of, and Tim Hardaway Jr. fitting into, just kind of what intrigues you the most about this bench unit?
Yeah, I think. Well, I'll start with the Peyton Watson ball handling evolution. Like
Yeah, that's been fun. Yeah.
there were points last night where he was like, is he like actually the point guard of the
Yeah.
second unit? Which I don't know if we're there yet, but he's another guy. He's going to have a really interesting extension window just because CB is going to get done first. And
That's
then,
obviously the priority. Yeah.
and then the Nuggets, again, if we're, I think I would expect Christian's extension to come in probably 25 to 30 annually. And when we're talking about those kind of numbers mixed in with Jamal, Joker, and Aaron's contracts, you're up against the second apron pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And so Peyton has said all the right things about, he's not sweating the extension. But I think there is a outcome where he potentially, might be like the Bruce Brown from the championship season, where it's just like, oh no, he's too good.
Yeah.
And that means, then the Nuggets are going to have to make really tough decisions, even if it has, even beyond, Jonas Valanciunas' contract is not guaranteed at all for next season. So like, even if you wipe that from the books, those two extensions will put the Watson Brown extensions would put them right up on the second apron. So I think,
yeah, and then you're looking at dumping Zeke with a pick, which they don't really have much of those left. So it's like that all kind of, it gets really, whatever CB's number ends up being, it's going to get really tight really quick with, like you said, and all these teams basically are treating the second apron as a hard cap at this point. So
yeah, so I think Peyton's in for a really really interesting season. One thing Bruce Brown said a couple of weeks ago that kind of raised my eyebrows. He said, he's asked about the difference, between who he was in that 2023 season and who he is coming back to Denver. And he brought up the operation he had last year that, delayed his start of the season. And said, like, he's not dunking as much anymore. Like, he's still trying to get some of that burst back.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's 2 years older. I think he's nearing 30, and as a elder 30-year-old, 30-something, like that wall is real. You don't maintain all of the athleticism you once had.
I'm starting to feel it in the weekly pickup runs. I'm already starting to feel it as an upper 20s. Yeah, I'm starting to feel it.
30 is undefeated. But like, so I think those two guys kind of like top the list of bench guys I'm like most intrigued about. Like, I think Jonas Valanciunas is Jonas Valanciunas for the most part. Like,
Yeah.
I think he does unlock some stuff for that second unit in terms of keeping the style of play similar.
I think that's a big thing. Yeah.
And I think I wrote about this a while ago, or just like a brief mention of it. But like the last time the Nuggets had a center who was capable of just like keeping it somewhat recognizable from Jokic to non-Jokic minutes was Boogie Cousins.
Yeah.
And that was like a very short-lived split.
That was really small. Yeah, that was a really small window.
But there were times where, I think Joker missed a couple games when DeMarcus was here, and it was just like, oh, okay, yeah, it's it's not like black and white. It's not shocking when it's for everybody else on the court with them. The style of play doesn't change so drastically, and I think Tim Hardaway Jr. is kind of in the same spot of Cam Johnson, where I think for right now we should be focusing on, are they in the right spots? Are they taking the right shots?
Yes.
And I think for the most part, Tim has not hit many shots, but I think for the most part, he's taken the right ones, and I think that's probably the most important part for where for this point in the process.
Yeah, he's always been kind of a streaky shooter, and he always kind of shot the ball well in the playoffs. So I think, like you said, it's all about taking the right shots for him. And I think Bruce is probably, like you said, the most intriguing because he's a different player than he was 2 years ago. It still cracks me up that he used to be like kind of a small ball five for the Nets before he got to the Nuggets, and now he was very much kind of a combo guard when the Nuggets had him. A little bit more explosive athlete than he probably is now, but it'll be interesting to see if he's kind of strictly a backup point guard. But even with this team, there's no such thing really as a true point guard, because that's kind of Joker with the starters. There's a bunch of guys that can handle ball handling duties throughout the second unit. So before I get you out of here today, Vinny, this has been a really good in-depth look at this team, but we talked about this a little bit on the previous episode, but the Nuggets over under, I think it's like 53.5 right now, somewhere around there. And I went over on this team. Like, what do you think the record preseason or the regular season record is going to be for this team? And what seed do you think they're going to get? I mean, it feels like there's very little outcome. The largest outcome is obviously the 2 seed. But do you see a world where there's anything else? And just kind of how do you see this regular season going? Could it be different than years past? Like you already said, they might approach it a little bit differently than they have in recent years.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on the over. I think 54.5 would be the highest line I would take the over on. I'm not going north of 55.5. So what is that?
I think 55, 56 wins is where they're going to end up. So I'm comfortable with where it is now. But if, like you said, if it was a win or two higher, I'd be a little bit weary about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm gonna take the easy out and say like the 2 seed feels most likely.
Yeah. Especially with Houston now, the way they are without Van Vliet, unless they make a major trade before New Year's or something. But other than that, yeah.
Yeah, and like I think I would be more tempted to say the Nuggets would finish with the 1 seed than I would be the 3 seed.
I agree with that.
It's something that's said so often about how hard it is to repeat, and it's something I don't know how much you hear it so much, it's just like one of those, okay, you just accept it as fact. But I don't know if I like recognize how meaningful that is until you watch the Nuggets try and defend their title and the effort they're getting from opposing teams on a nightly basis. And then you look at, Oklahoma City's still a young, they have now the playoff experience, but they don't have the experience of defending a championship.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing is, I think the kind of the nightly grind of being the hunted can wear on you physically and mentally. So I think that's where I'm at in terms of thinking it's more likely the Nuggets get the 1 seed than the 3 seed.
Yeah, if anything, I think that stuff will catch up to OKC in the postseason because I mean they're just so deep, and we even think they won 68 games last year. And how many games did Chet miss? Like how many games did Hartenstein miss? Like there was a decent chunk of the year where Jalen Williams, J Dub, was playing center for that team at like 6'6". So there, and I think there's levels that other guys can take, whether it's Chet taking another level with a full season, or Kason Wallace, and kind of all those other guys that aren't SGA or J Dub who are already established All NBA guys. So I have the Nuggets as the 2 seed, and I think we are in for hopefully a heavyweight Western Conference Finals. So I think that would be an all-timer series if we do get it. Before we get into record like postseason predictions, how far you think this team is going to go? Do you think anybody on the Nuggets wins an award this year? That could be players, coaches, whatever. Like I don't think there's any real good sixth man cases or really even defensive player of the year cases because Victor Wembanyama exists. But so I'm basically asking, do you think Nikola Jokic will win MVP, or could David Adelman win Coach of the Year?
Yeah, I think DA winning Coach of the Year would be if I had to rank the likely outcomes, Joker MVP, DA Coach of the Year.
DA was still like plus 2,200 for Coach of the Year the other day. I was like, I would snag that if I was somebody. That's some really good odds, I think.
Yeah, I think just the opportunity of, your first-year coach, inheriting a
First-year
team.
coach always have like an inherent advantage in that award. Yeah.
You inherit a team with super high expectations. So, especially if one thing that I think we haven't talked about that the Nuggets have talked a lot about this preseason is the very defensive looks they want to give. And I think some of this is probably just putting it out there, trying to get it in people's minds. It'd be like a triple option team saying like, oh, well, we are going to mix in the pass a little bit more this season.
Yeah, watch out for the 4 verts. Yeah. Air Force saying watch out for 4 verts.
I think we saw it a little bit in the playoffs where like DA was more willing to admit like we have our defensive shortcomings are such that we have to play zone. If I remember correctly, I want to say there were like some like triangle and 2 possessions or like
it was super creative in the postseason, especially at the end of that OKC series where it's like you're getting into some of the guts of these games and it's like we're kind of basically doubling. It's basically like like you said, triangle and 2 guarding SGA. That's kind of how it was. I put my points.
So I think that's one of those like if for the people who are really watching the willingness to try different stuff defensively and the experimentation offensively, I think will be big parts of DA's potential Coach of the Year case. But yeah, I'm with you. I think that's pretty much it. I think last year was Christian Brown's best bet to win Most Improved Player. I think he raised his league-wide reputation so much that it's the jump in production that is required to win Most Improved Player is just not going to be there for him.
Yeah, he's just not going to have the opportunities to make that next leap. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not in Denver.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So I think it's probably Joker MVP and DA for Coach of the Year as the probably the 2 only real outcomes. And I guess if you want to throw Jamal Murray All-Star in there, that's not an end of year award, but it's something that has become such a talking point around here that I think those would be the only really 3 things I'm watching.
I would love to see it. It's a stupid award in general. I don't really, it means nothing to me, but I would love to see Jamal go for like the clutch player award or something, like getting him a couple game winners. Because I know Joker's had been up for that award in the last couple of years. He was like a finalist last year or whatever. It's such a arbitrary award, but that would be fun if Jamal has like 3 game winners before Christmas or something, and the Nuggets are like pushing that campaign pretty hard. That would be funny. But all right, Vinny, this has been awesome. Just one last thing. How far does this Nuggets team go? I know it's, we're halfway through October, and June is June of 2026 feels like a different world, but just kind of where do you think this Nuggets team could be at that point?
It's the crazy thing where it's like, okay, they could be the 3 seed and run into the Thunder worst case scenario, they're the 4 or 5 and run into the Thunder
like last year, yeah.
Then you run into them in the second round. So I think it just comes down to seeding because, like, it's if you pick the Nuggets to come out of the West, I don't know why you're not picking them to win the title. Like,
yeah,
I just don't. I don't know if the East is going to have a team that is. I mean,
it's either Cleveland or New York. Yeah, it's either the Cavs or the Knicks. Feels like they're coming out of the East. Yeah.
And to your point, I mean, if we did this podcast a year ago, I don't think either one of us would have had the Pacers making the finals and
No,
taking
no.
the Thunder to 7 games. So like there always is that potential. But yeah, I think the Nuggets are, especially in the wake of the Van Vliet injury, I think the Nuggets are uh, clearly one of the two best teams in the league. Unfortunately, the West is such that that might mean you run into the other member of the top two club.
Yeah, the West Finals might be the finals this year. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that's why this regular season is so important. You get yourself the 2 seed. That certainly doesn't guarantee you make the conference finals, but I think that would, if the Nuggets are the 2 seed, I think they'd be a pretty clear favorite to get out of the first 2 rounds and make the conference finals. So, I think that should be, it's a high expectation, but I think that probably should be the expectation.
Yeah, I agree, and I think I just don't really see a world where it's unless barring like major kind of catastrophic injuries on either side. I think we're staring at Thunder, Nuggets, 1-2 seeds, and they're meeting in the West Finals, and I think we're in for another really long, epic series like we had this past year. I mean, I don't think Nuggets fans forget, but I think maybe some NBA fans in general may forget how well the Nuggets played in that series and how close they were to potentially taking a 3-1 series lead back to OKC. With the way they played in Game 4 at home, blowing that lead late, and then obviously I think the Nuggets would have felt really good going into Game 7, but before the Aaron Gordon injury happened, and he's basically playing on one leg out there. So I think it's going to be a similar situation where it's 2-2 in the West Finals going back to OKC for Game 5, and then you could tell me either team wins, and I'm not going to make a prediction, but my prediction is that it's going to be 2-2 heading back to OKC for Game 5 of the West Finals, and we could be in for 2 or 3, hopefully 3 epic games to kind of decide who likely wins the title. Because I'm pretty high on the Knicks on the East side going into this year. I think they are going to make the finals this year. I think Mike Brown will have some good ideas, and that'll be the breakthrough for them. But I think whoever it is between OKC and Denver is going to end up winning the title this year. So it should be a very, very fun year. I think even with not a lot of drama, I think barring injuries, I still think it's going to be a fun year.
I'm with you there. I am hoping for another Denver OKC classic.
Yeah, that would be awesome. The environments that were great last year, so hopefully we get that. Thanks, Vinny. I appreciate you doing this. Season starts next week, and everybody can follow your coverage over at the Denver Gazette. You've done a great job so far in the regular season, so enjoy the start of the year. I'm going to try to get to a game as early as I can in the year. I think next Saturday I'll be up in Laramie for the Border War for the season, the home opener for the Nuggets, but I'll try to get there at some point in early November.
We'll have a spot for you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it, man. Have a good one. All right, that'll do it from today's episode of Basketball in the Mountains. Thanks again to my colleague at the Denver Gazette, Vinny Benedetto, for joining us. Make sure to stay tuned for the continued college hoop season preview series, which will be continuing next week. Got some good guests lined up to continue that. As we said, we're on the march towards March 3rd or November 3rd, excuse me, and I already got March Madness on the line, but November 3rd for the season opener for college hoops. Going to try to talk some more Suns and Jazz as well in the early parts of the season, depending how those teams look early on. We talked extensively about them in the Over Unders podcast earlier this week, so make sure to check that out as well. But thanks again for all of you for listening. Make sure to like the video if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe on Spotify or Apple. Leave a 5-star rating. All of that stuff is super appreciated by me and helps me grow the channel, and so we can get more great guests on the show throughout the season, which I'm looking forward to the first full season here of the podcast, because I think there's a lot we can do and cover on this show. So thanks to everybody for listening, and stay tuned for what's next.